So we're going to talk about the distance formula at first. Anyone have any ideas of what that means? If you want, you can raise your hand, you can direct message me, but what does what does the distance formula mean? I'll call on Isabel.
Oh, I was muted. The distance between 2 points on a line.
Okay, that is one way of distance. So if you remember Pythagorean theorem, then it's, the x coordinate squared plus the y coordinate squared, square root of that, of the sum of those. That's one distance. For today, I think, Kaden, you have an idea of what the distance formula today will be mean?
Distance equals rate times time.
Yes, so that's actually so you were right, Isabel, and this formula could mean a lot of things actually. But yeah, for today, we're going to talk about the one that Kaden said, which is rate times time. So does this look familiar to people? Please give me like a thumbs up, down, sideways. Does the distance formula here look familiar? Okay. Cool. So yeah, so distance is rate times time. I made a little visual for what this means. So say you have Lightning McQueen here, right? He's speed, right? So he has a rate that he might be going 30 miles per hour. And whenever you see something like per something, you can write it as a divided by, right? So over this unit. So 30 miles over 1 hour, that's another way of showing 30 miles per hour. And so that's what the rate means. For time, it would just mean, say he's going for like 5 hours, right? So what the d equals rt, what this means is that you can calculate the distance he traveled if you have this rate at this time, right? So if you're driving a car and you're driving at 30 miles per hour and you drive for 5 hours, then you traveled the rate times time distance, which is 150 miles. So does it make sense what this formula is saying, what this means? You can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways of what this generally is saying. Okay, cool. So now that everyone is an expert, let's do a problem. So if a race car travels at a constant speed of 100 miles per hour for 12 minutes, how far does the race car travel? Express your answer in miles. So please direct message me your answer once you get this. All right, so let me start going over this. So the things to highlight. So this is also something I want to start doing with you guys. So when you see problems, just there are certain parts, certain keywords to look at. So in this case, 100 miles per hour, that is the rate. And then you have 12, okay, ignore the seconds, that's minutes. Um, so you're traveling for the time, which is 12 minutes, and then you're multiplying by one. And then if you need to convert these minutes to hours, so there are 60 minutes in an hour. Ignore me saying seconds. Um, and then you have there 20 miles. So there's that problem. Um, here's another one. So Robert went on a 3-day vacation. On the first day, he drove 6 hours, traveled 260 miles. The second day, he drove for 11 hours, traveled 640 miles. And on the last day, he drove for 7 hours and traveled 300 miles. What was his average speed over the 3 days? Express your answer in miles per hour. Right, I'll be going over this soon. Don't worry too much if you are having difficulty. This one's a little tricky. Um, all right, so let's start going over this. Would anyone like to go over what they did for this? Any volunteers? Isabel?
So like the average speed of a bunch of stuff is total distance over total time. So that I just added up 260 and 640 and 300, and I got 1,200. And then I added up 6 plus 11 plus 7, and I think I got 12. And then the answer was like 50. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So something to be careful about for this question is you might see a bunch of rates like 260 miles in 6 hours, 640 miles in 11, and 300 over 7. But just because you see these three rates, don't add the rates. That's something you have to make sure you don't do. So you can't add rates. And if you're trying to get the total average, um, what you would do is, like Isabel said, you would get the total distance um, and then also the total time. And then from our formula, instead of doing distance is rate times time, you can do distance divided by time is the rate, right? So you have the distance, you have the time, and so you can calculate your rate. So uh, it was 1,200 miles for distance, 24 hours for time, and that should give you the 50 miles per hour. Does this make sense to everyone? So thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. Is this looking okay? Okay, so let's go to work. And what by that I mean, what is the work formula? So kind of like the when I asked you about distance formula, anyone have ideas of what the work formula might be? And like I said before, I think there could actually be a lot of different ways, but anyone have an idea of what work might mean? Okay, no worries. I think this one isn't taught as much in general. Kaden?
It's a work equals force times displacement, or like that's
Yeah,
like this thing like that's like removed.
yeah, that is the physics formula. So that's why, yeah, it's not that one. But that is indeed a work formula that you'll learn in physics. So the work formula that I'm talking about today is more simple, where it's basically the rate times time times the number of people is the amount of work that you'll get. This one, you'll see some problems kind of related to this, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But let me show you kind of like with the distance equals rate times time, what this is saying, because this one is a little harder to understand. So I know that very popular game is Minecraft. So in this case, rate would be some type of amount of output, and you can think of work actually as output. So like in this case, work could be like number of diamonds that you make, but rate is now something like the amount of output per time and per person. So in this example, if you have, a person, a Minecraft person, maybe they mine 30 diamonds per hour per miner. That's what the rate would mean. So one person in 1 hour can mine out 30 diamonds. This expressed as in its units would look something like this, right? So per hour per miner, divide. And this as a fraction would be 30 diamonds over hours times miner. I'm just going to show you how to do that in case you can also think of it like 30 diamonds per hour over miner. And remember, if you divide by something, if you divide fractions, you have to do a keep change flip. So we can make the bottom one 2. So we multiply by 1 over minor, right? This is the same thing. And then you have this. So the rate in this case is 30 diamonds per hour times minor. does that make sense? So this is really important to get, right? So diamonds is at the top, and then hours and minors at the bottom. Thumbs up if this makes sense, thumbs down if it doesn't make sense, sideways if it makes some sense. Right, okay, so yeah, so this is important because when we multiply by the number of people, in this case minors, the amount of time, in this case hours, you'll get the output, the diamond. So rate is again 30 diamonds per hour times minor. Time is as before, how many hours. And then the P just says how many people do we have working on this, right? So if we have 3 minors, then we have 3 people doing this at the same time. And what this formula is saying that if you multiply all of these together, you will get the amount of work, or really the amount of output. I think a really good way of saying this is output. And so you'll see that if you multiply them together, the minor unit cancels, the hour unit cancels, and you just have the diamonds left. Also the numbers that you multiply. And so you'll have 450 diamonds in this example. So now you know how to win at Minecraft. Um, so that's what the work formula generally is. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, cool. So we're going to go into an example now that we're work formula experts now. So this example is that Josh can make 10 paper airplanes every 5 minutes. How long would it take him to produce 114 airplanes, assuming he continues to make planes at a constant rate? Express your answer in minutes. So please direct message me what you get for this. So what I hope that, so you can always use the formula and try to figure out which parts you have, which parts you have missing. Um, I think in the future, at least for me, I tend to not remember formulas, especially something like work. Um, you can also try to get an idea of what's going on and try to figure out from there. So um, I'll explain more soon when we go over it. So I'm going to give another minute or so for this. All right, so I'm going to start going over this question. So um, if we remember the different parts, so the rate in this case would be 10 airplanes per every 5 minutes. And we can get this from here. He makes 10 airplanes every 5 minutes. Um, and actually, in this case, the trick is that the number of people is just one. So I think that's the biggest trick in this case. And if you think about it, the distance formula is also just the work formula, except it's just one thing that you're talking about. And the work is like the distance, and your rate is like how much distance are you making per hour, right? So um, that's an interesting connection there. But yeah, in this case, the rate is 10 airplanes per every 5 minutes per person, but there's actually just one person. Um, the person is one, so I actually didn't even write person here. Um, and then the time in this case, we don't know. We're looking for, right? He continues to make planes at a constant rate. And the amount of output that we have is actually 114. So with these numbers, you should be able to figure out the time. And if you plug everything in, and the people cancel out here in the rate, um, and then you would get 57 minutes. Another way of thinking of this, if you just another way of thinking of this is, if you look at the problem, you'll see that he makes 10 airplanes per every 5 minutes. It might be easier to think of this like he makes 2 airplanes every minute. So if someone's making 2 airplanes every minute, so after 1 minute he makes two, after 2 minutes he makes four, after 3 minutes he makes six. How long would it take for him to make 114 airplanes? And hopefully that's a bit easier of a question to answer, right? Someone's making 2 airplanes every minute. How long will it take for them to make 114? So you just divide 114 by 2 and you get 57. So if you don't remember the work formula, you can just kind of think it out as well. Let's move on to another problem here. This could be a little more difficult, but again, either think to the work formula or think, you know, think in your head, like have an image in your head, hopefully like the Minecraft example here, an image of people doing some amount of work. This time, there's not just one person. So if 3 factory workers can paint $120 in 5 days, how many days would it take for 6 workers to paint $960? So I'll give about 3 minutes for this question. Give maybe another minute. Okay, so let's go over this one. So for this one, if you use, so I'm going to go over the method that I gave before. So you know that the rate is, you can, with 3 workers in 5 days, they make $120. So the question is, how many days would it take for 6 workers to make $960? So if you were to double the workers to 6, you know that it would be $240, right? So double the amount of workers, you have double the amount of dollars. Now you at least have the 6 workers in common, and the $240 is not the same as 960, right? So if you figure out that, if you divide it, you actually figure out that it's a factor of 4. So 4 times 240 is 960. So if you keep the 6 workers, you have to multiply the amount of time, right? So this is still at the same rate. So instead of, so if you have 6 workers at 20 days, $960, right? So the whole logic here is that we have 3 workers working for 5 days, we have $120. If you multiply by a factor of 2 for workers, you double the amount of dollars created. If you multiply by 4 the amount of time you use, you multiply by 4 the dollars created. And now this result you get at the end gives you the answer. You're looking for how many days it would take. And in this case, for 6 workers, it would take 20 days to make $960. So that's a bit of a shortcut if you don't want to use the work